Welcome to today's live stream, our client spotlight conversation. My name is Tziporah Kingsbury from supportintimacy.com, where I help high achieving adults to find sustainable inner peace and to learn the skills to gain more confidence and self-esteem in the realms of emotional intimacy and communication. Now, I know today we are live on several channels. So before we dive into our topic and I introduce our special guest, I want to just take a moment to invite you over to my free Facebook group called Intimacy Hub. And it's in that Intimacy Hub where typically I am offering live trainings and content on a weekly basis. So today's conversation is special because who doesn't need better communication and a calmer nervous system at this time on the planet, right? And so our special guest today is Mark New, and he has come here before with me live. We've talked about his personal experiences with relationships, both in the workplace and personally. But today's topic is specifically focused on relationships during lockdown from not my perspective, but a client's perspective. I felt it could be so easy for me to just get on here and tell you what I think, but I find conversations or these conversations with humans from around the world inspire me, and they're so relatable and I have so much fun doing them. So I wanted to bring Mark back on because him and I have been in conversation about this topic. So welcome, Mark.
Hi. How are you?
Hi, welcome. So Mark, let's start by you sharing a bit about you. Like, where are you calling in from today? What do you do for work? And what are you excited about in this present moment?
Well, say for myself, hi, I'm Mark. I'm from London, from England. I'm sure your guests can probably recognise with the accent, so that's me. I'm a key worker, so I work in the government department. So it's a nice team there, but hugely busy, stretched within resources, as I think many people are. But I think what's important for me is really navigating the path, finding a way to stay present with work, stay present with relationships there, and at the same time as well to stay focused, to get the job done, and with compassion, and with compassion, with energy, and obviously ideally with some success as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you have dove so deep into evolving your relationships during lockdown. And I know that because you joined me and a group of amazing people from around the world this summer fall through my 10-week program called Mastery of Connection, Redefining Intimacy. So I acknowledge you for how deeply and committed you are to this path and relating better to other humans. Yeah. Today, as we dive into this conversation, I'd love to begin by would you share maybe your top 3 to 4 struggles, personally or professionally in relationships that you experienced more amplified during when lockdown started?
Yeah, well, I think even say is very basic first, obviously, in terms of communication is very important pre-pandemic, and obviously during the pandemic when everyone's either Zooming as we are now, or if they're in different meeting spaces. The communication skills aren't just something small. You have your CV, do you tick the box, and somewhere in there are your communication skills. Right now, they're probably number one. The number one for most people, for me especially, you can possibly hear as well with my speech, I'm recovering as a stammerer. So my greatest fear in life when I was a child was my stammer. And I managed to cure it. Not say cure it, but I went through a very exciting space with a teacher with some breath work. That's my first ever teacher. It was hugely important and powerful for me. So really then fast forwarding into being in the pandemic, the communication skills are very important and even more potentially important but challenging for me. So I'm aware that it's challenge and it's important. So for me, really to find the best teacher, and my experience, I can only speak for myself, is the breathwork teacher was life-changing for me when I was younger. So obviously now to find which teacher resonates for me, and obviously I was very grateful to be in connection with you from a couple of years back as a breathwork teacher. So I always knew that your work would resonate strongly with me. But
Yeah.
I think it was very much when I came into practice with the work, that then stage by stage, individual examples, I was thinking, how was I before, and wow, how am I now?
Yeah. So, Mark, do you have any? I'm
Hmm.
hearing communication was an amplified challenge during
Yeah.
lockdown. Could you maybe specify a couple more challenges that you noticed, whether emotionally, psychologically, physically for you during lockdown that could have impacted relationships, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, I think if I can share a particular example with my mum, yes, I'm very close to my mum and dad. I'm very grateful they live nearby. Mum phoned me for help with a health condition. One was before the pandemic, one was this morning. And it was interesting for me to compare the two episodes. The episode before, mum needed to call an ambulance. She needed to go into hospital, and obviously I jumped down in the car, rushed through there to help, and I was aware that I was having problems with my breath. I was physically and emotionally frozen. And obviously, I was still helping, things worked through, we got everything sorted. But I was aware from a physical and emotional space, I was a little bit blocked. Probably it was, as I say, it was fear or flight, and I went into fear because it was my mum.
Mm.
Then fast forward to what happened this morning. Mum phoned me. She needed to book her appointment for the vaccination. It's just rolled out in the UK. Dad had received a text on his phone, all sorted. Mum has an older phone, doesn't have a smartphone, and it didn't work. So Mum phoned me for help. And my feeling is, had this been before the training, I would have gone into not complete shock, but obviously an element of fear. It's my mum. Will she be able to cope? I'm the son. Will I be able to cope? Whereas now, what was happening, I could just breathe. And when I breathe and really pause, then that really helped me to stay present and to stay focused. And then I was more of a help and support for mum and more of a help and support for myself as well.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
got things sorted, managed to find a different route through to get mum booked in, and it was all sorted.
Yeah.
But it was the breath work was really, really key.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, if I were to kind of unpack that a bit, I'm hearing your struggle was more with that fight, flight, or freeze response, more of the panic response in the nervous system that was more elevated maybe earlier on during lockdown. While you still have the ability to take action, it wasn't necessarily as beneficial for the whole of your system and your nervous system and your well being. Would that be correct?
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Were there any other struggles, not just the benefits, but more so the struggles that you found? Was your communication challenged at all during lockdown? What were there stressors that maybe impacted your personal or professional relationship? Were there any?
Yeah, well, if I can share possibly in my professional work, it's a department where we're quite stretched with the resources, as I'm sure many places are, and an issue of boundaries
Mm,
came up. And I'm sure for many people out there, when a manager comes to you and says, "We really need you to get this done," obviously 9 times out of 10, I'll help, and other people would help as well. But a certain stage with boundaries, you need to say, I haven't got time to do this. I need to reorganize my priorities and also liaise with the manager to help him reorganize his priorities and the team's priorities. And when I really stopped to breathe and focused, rather than go into fear and flight, and I must automatically say yes, automatically say no, when I stopped and breathed, I was more present. And the answer became really obvious, really easy, and we managed to work it through. So I think it was partially with the breath work, but the other thing that came into it as well, we had in the communication skills as part of the training, was about keeping it short, keeping the communication, especially in those key times, short. And the reason for that, when it's short, it's more present. If I go into long story, it goes into emotion. And if I go into emotion, the risk is the other side, the manager may come into, let's say, emotion as well, and so resistance. So it's really when you compare, it's really when you compare the two, the short communications are a lot easier, more effective, and there's more compassion as well.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. And it's been so beautiful to witness. It's been such a gift to witness your journey, because I've had the gift of going deeper with you in your communication. And if I would share more with the viewers today is, Mark's journey, and I think it's similar for many of us, is saying yes all the time because we think that's beneficial, or we're scared to hurt someone's feelings, or we're scared of the repercussions that if we say no, and also that we don't know how to say no in a way that it's received. And that's where Mark's talking about with the compassion. But the brilliance of what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is through the breathwork therapy, which is what we're here talking about, is it's not just that you were just taking a deep breath, that Mark had the ability to use breathwork therapy to go in and understand these core trauma patterns and emotional loops and start to shift them from the inside out. And that was the starting point to have an open slate to be able to learn new skills, which is what I hear you talking about, Mark, to wow, like this was the habit. I would always say yes. And then I would go home and feeling exhausted and not having the fulfillment of the relationship or the business associates, that connection. But now it's like I could listen more, like I have more capacity to listen. And in listening, I can also, wow, no, I'm not available. And I see how this is a very important task to be done. But setting a boundary, and then in that space, because you're able to so eloquently like express it because your nervous system is calm. Am I on track here? Is that right? Is
Yeah,
that correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was I'm going to ask you this because I know, because I've already talked to you about this, but was your response different when you would set a boundary? Like, did that open up new possibilities?
Yeah, it was yeah, yeah. So yeah, so yeah, so yeah. So, completely. I mean, I can say. I mean, obviously, I think obviously my default was always to say yes, and then the first time when I said no, you could hear this like shock, this like stunned silence. My God, Mark said no. And rather than, I suppose my fear and my projection was that their attitude to me would come down, would be Hoa, whereas actually no, they respected me more, and that was this absolute shift for me. And I think obviously it's many people probably in a similar situation. I think possibly, I mean, because I've done a lot of work in conscious community workshops, conscious sexuality workshops. We work with consent in a workshop space, which is wonderful. But taking it into the outside world, and especially into the professional world, that can be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And it was a huge shift for me when I realised other people there can really respect me more for saying no, not in the wrong way, because they know I'm not going to always say no. It means when they hear my no, it means they can also respect my yes.
Yeah.
So those
Yeah.
two are important for me.
So wonderfully said. When I express my no, they can also hear my yes, like receive my yes. But what I'm getting, and I just want to get this across to listeners, is you didn't just say no. Like I've worked with people who they're just like, I have no issue with communicating what I need. And they're just like, but people just keep like getting agitated when I do it. And I'm just like, well, what? What are you feeling? Like, what's your body physiological? I can't even speak today. What's your body feeling like in it? Are you tense? Are you contracted? What's the tone of your voice? What is the energy behind what you're asking for? And again, what I'm hearing, it's not that you just firmly said no. You were able to be so in tune with your nervous system and be so grounded and present in your body that when you said no, that you did it from a really center integral place. It's something that I call our belly voice versus our head voice. Is that true? Would that make sense?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm loving this because you're sharing your struggles, but you're also sharing, which was my next question, what were your turnarounds? But you're already sharing your turnarounds, and you've so quickly applied them. And so, one of the things we're here talking about is early 2020, I pivoted all my work when it comes to navigating relationship challenges. And at the beginning of lockdown 2020, into online programs, which many of us have. And so, what I created was a 10-week program called The Mastery of Connection Redefining Intimacy. And the vision of that course was how to weave together the potency of breathwork therapy and start to help people understand more of the root cause of where their relationships habits or dysfunctions or personality choices, like where they were actually coming from and where they started. So it was beyond learning from our minds, but it was actually learning from a felt sense, right? A felt sense is when we don't just think about the judgment or the reaction from the mind, but we're able to actually come in contact with how the body is actually reacting to an experience, not just how the mind and our thoughts are reacting to an experience. So in this program, we dive deep into the breathwork therapy, and then that's our doorway to building a relationship with what I call the chi aspect, the physiological aspect, right? So the sensations, the felt sense, and then that goes into the emotional aspect, and then the behavioral aspect, and how those four aspects interlinked, how they impact our relational choices and aspects. And this is something that I'm so grateful that I shared with Mark this summer. And we're about to launch a new program on February 3rd, Wednesdays at noontime, to cater to my friends over there across the ocean in Europe. And then next Thursday, the 14th, we have an evening class more catered to West Coasters if they want an evening class at 5:30. But Mark, can you share briefly, are there 1 to 3 really key benefits that we haven't talked about yet that you just want people to know? These were my big, big takeaways through lockdown, and why it was important for you through lockdown to experience these 10 weeks in this community setting.
Well, there's different things. I think one thing that I said, we've probably touched onto it. It's really it's being very present. When you said, if we go into our head, and when I go into my head, I go into thoughts, I go into the past. But I'm not reliving my past. I'm not projecting what happened in a past relationship, in a past situation. I'm me now. And to get into that present space, all I need to do is just to breathe. Because when I breathe, I'm present. It's me in my body, not me in my head. So the impact for that, it means either in a work situation, which can be easy or it can be challenging, and I can feel physically my shoulders, I feel this weight on my shoulders, my breath tightening. I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a challenging day. But I just breathe and pause and stop and realize it's not the same person last week or last month. I'm me now. And the difference with me now, I've evolved, I've learned, and I've grown. And I think that single thing has been really important for me. Really, just in a simple way to learn, evolve, and grow. And I chat obviously with other friends out there in Facebook land, and different people out there who are going through, some working, some not working, some easy times, some more challenging. And I think part of the things what I'm doing, and I'm thinking, wow, shouldn't this be even tougher for me? But really, the fact of having a space to learn and feeling that I'm growing, evolving with each situation, I think that alone, that theme, that sort of that sort of flow of energy has really been moving me forward. I haven't been stuck in first lockdown, second lockdown. I'm evolving, learning with each space. And that feeling of learning gives me motivation and it gives me encouragement. Yeah,
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 lovely breathing. I'm just hearing breath like guide every one part of your actions, and I love how you described the constriction, the shoulders going up, the body contracts, and there's the difference between learning from our head space only, between learning from the body space. We can't have full integration of our emotional body unless we are willing to go into that felt sense. Because I was just with someone, working with someone earlier today, and the simple techniques of somatic techniques of tracking, like bringing attention and tracking the sensations in the body and how the body is responding, because often we're unconscious of the tensions in the body, and the tensions in the body, or something I like to say is that as humans we are controlled by sensation. And so most of us, our actions are being controlled by sensations that our body's feeling, but we're not even aware that we're feeling them because we're so out of tune. Like we're just most not taught the importance of building this type of relationship with the felt sense, with the body, with the physiology, like what's going on. And that's what I love about this conversation today. And when we go into the 10-week program, I say that it's no longer intimacy by numbers. And I know I challenge so many people by that. I think of my years, my 2 decades in this work, and how often I challenge people, but like you, they're so willing and they dive in. Is It's so right. We normally, as humans, we learn from our minds, but I trust and have faith that people um, have what they need to dive deeper into the body, as long as the space around them, they feel safe and they feel connected. And that safety and connection is only going to happen when you have the ability and the environment to go more into your feelings and your body, because that's where security comes. And that's what I'm hearing as well. Mark is sharing in all of his responses and his outcomes in the course. So we're going to prepare to close today's conversation in just a few minutes for those of you listening. But there's one piece I wrote down, and I want to just touch on it. So Mark mentioned having clearer and shorter conversations. And I'm just going to kind of use my languaging there. My interpretation of that is having the ability to have concise and clear communication. The word concise is really important. And how often, when you've been stuck in your fight, flight, or freeze, and the emotions are taking over, that you get caught up, or I've done it. I don't want to just say you, that we get caught up in talking for hours about the experience. And when I say that, I'm not saying that's not important or that's not valuable. Your experience is very invaluable. But what I'm saying is, often we lose track of what we're actually feeling and what we're actually needing. And until my belief, until we're actually have the ability to share with another, professionally or personally, what we're feeling, like concisely, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling nervous, and share what we're needing, we're not going to be able to create a succinct win-win outcome. And so that's one of the things I know Mark mentioned, of not getting emotion involved, but rather sharing concisely what you're feeling, asking questions about what the other person is feeling, what they're needing, because that creates a field, right, where we can be curious and get different outcomes. So I just wanted to address that piece and just go deeper into what you shared earlier, Mark. But with the awareness that we're going to close our spotlight conversation here today, is there anything else that you just want to leave our viewers or listeners with today from this conversation about navigating relationships during lockdown?
Well, if I just say one quick thing, I watched a YouTube last night with Matthew McConaughey. He's got his new book coming out soon, and it's a very interesting interview. But one thing that the interviewer asked him or said to him that really, really struck with me, and he said, it's the humility. And he asked him, what does humility mean to you, Matthew? He said, it's, I always have more to learn. And it was that I was thinking, wow. And friends could probably ask me, Mark, you've done one course, you've done two courses. Why are you coming back for a third course? Because I know there's always more to learn. So I've done the first two courses, very grateful to come back for the third, and obviously big invitation to other people out there, whether you're joining us for the first time or joining us again after the first two courses, you're very welcome to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And what a beautiful reminder. Yes, I always have more to learn, and every single day. And so, thank you, Mark, for stepping in that as well for yourself. And thank you to you listening here with us today. And if I will extend an invitation to join us for the Redefining Mastery of Connection, Redefining Intimacy 10-week virtual program. And we have two dates, but specifically February 3rd, our next course starts at noontime Pacific, which is 8 p.m. UK time. And we also have a course that's going to start next week, which is Thursday, which is a 5:30 p.m. class, catered to those who want to work in the evening with this program. But either way, you can come over to visit the course website, which is redefining-intimacy.com. And my request to you is hit the button to schedule a call with me. Don't think about registration, but let's have a conversation. I am offering complimentary 15-minute calls so I can actually learn more about you, your present day needs. And what last thing I'll add, what I love about this program is the ability to be able to personalize a lot of it so you can instantly start applying the practices to your present moment life, and that you've received coaching and mentoring for your personal experience. So, so thank you so much, Mark, for coming back and having this very real, impactful conversation. And thank you all for listening in today. Be well, and until next time.